Welcome to the Grazing Grass Podcast, episode 212. On today's episode, we have Mike Guebert of Oregon sharing about his journey with multiple species, direct-to-consumer marketing, and changes to how they market. Also, we get into how he's facilitating learning for others. You're listening to the Grazing Grass Podcast, built around conversations with grazers, ranchers, and farmers who are working to make their land better than they found it. I'm your host, Cal Hardage. If you're looking to grow your profits, elevate your grazing operation, or just want to get your hands dirty, Noble Research Institute can help, no matter the size, location, or scope of your operation. Noble's 2- and 3-day educational courses were designed to build real-world skills in regenerative ranching. Noble Land Essentials helps you harness the power of your soil for better forage, better livestock, and better returns. Noble Grazing Essentials demonstrates how to optimize forage use to get the best from your livestock and grazing land. Noble Profitability Essentials can help you improve your business skills with financial tools to maximize your ranch's profitability. And the Business of Grazing offers ways to make your grazing strategies work for your bottom line. Scholarship and grant opportunities are available for those who qualify. Visit noble.org to learn more about these courses and enroll today. For 10 seconds about the podcast, a little over 2 years ago, I left my W-2 job to focus on the podcast and on the farm. To make this happen and keep my bills paid, I've had to sell income-producing assets from the farm. And when I say income-producing assets, I'm talking about cattle. In fact, I have a handful of cows and heifers for sale right now. But I'm also getting towards the end of my rope or runway. So I have started searching for a potential job. So if you happen to know of a job opportunity out there that could work for me, shoot me an email. I'm interested to talk to you. For 10 seconds about the farm, the goats are almost finished kidding. And as you know from previous conversations, I did not do a good job separating the rams and bucks last year. So it's just a matter of me waiting for them to start kidding. And they basically have finished. I still have just a handful. I only have a handful to start with, just a dozen does. And I've still got 4 to kid, but basically we're almost finished. Thus, kids are getting born. Mike, we want to welcome you to the Grazing Grass Podcast. To get started today, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your operation?
Sure. Yeah, my farm is called Terra Farma. My name is Mike Guebert, and we are in Northwest Oregon. So we're right at the west end of the Columbia Gorge, if you're familiar with the area, just east of the Portland metro region. So we're in a area with high rainfall. We get 55 to 60 inches of rain every year.
Oh, yes.
And we produce a variety of livestock on our farm, everything from beef cattle to pork, lamb, goats, varieties of poultry. And we do our own processing on farm for the poultry. We distribute our products through a meat CSA and some individual on-farm sales as well. And both my wife and I are first-generation farmers. We kind of ended up at this place not really having a plan to be farmers. And we were living in the city, kind of wanted a place to have a big garden. We were even vegetarians at the time. And we kept seeing this place come up. And this was in 2001, when looking for a house isn't like it is now. And I kept thinking, oh, it's just too far out. And then we finally took a drive out there. It's like, oh, it's actually pretty close. And we had no idea what we were doing. We'd never bought a house before. And we just kind of jumped in and bought it, even though we probably really couldn't even afford it, but that was a time when they'd give a mortgage to anybody. And so, we got in and really didn't have any idea what we were doing, and but happened to meet the right people at the right time over the next several years. And, someone gave us our first few chickens, and, it kind of snowballed over the next few years. We kind of added one enterprise a year, and we were still very small because we still weren't planning on being farmers, but we needed to do something with all this land. And after a few years of that, we realized that this is what we were made to do. And, we kind of still slowly grew into it, but over time, we knew that was the direction we wanted to go. So, as the operation grew, my wife eventually quit her job to farm full time. I kept my off-farm job just to provide some security and health care, but then eventually left that job 5 years ago when we paid off the mortgage, and then was full-time. Both of us were full-time on the farm for 3 years. And then I ended up getting a farm-related job a couple years ago. But, there's been struggles along the way too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And then, but during that time, even though, we were both kind of introverts and kind of shy and not really putting ourselves out there, people started recognizing that we had things to offer. And, I do, even though I'm an introvert, I love to teach and I like to talk about what we do. And people started looking up to us. And I realized that I had an opportunity maybe to help other people along their journey and maybe avoid some of the pitfalls that we went through. So I started getting asked to be involved in some policy issues, and I became more and more interested in that, testifying at the state capitol to help get some bills passed. We got the 1,000-bird poultry exemption passed here in Oregon. And,
yes.
It just triggered something in me that's like, oh, I can make a difference, even just my one voice. And then I ran for office at our conservation district and was elected there 3 times. So I served on the board of directors for 13 years at our conservation district and was able to really do some amazing things there, which maybe we'll get into a little bit later. But yeah, that's kind of a little bit of an overview.
Yeah, the thing that jumps out most to me, even looking at your website and reading your story on there, you were vegetarians. What led you to become a vegetarian? Let's start there.
Well, I think it was more kind of the things we even see now. I mean, there's a lot of misinformation out there and some propaganda about how animals are raised. And, and some of it's true. I mean, some animals are raised in horrific conditions. And, but that's not the whole story. And I didn't know the whole story. So once we started doing it ourselves, I realized that, animals can be raised in a way that is respectful to them and also in a way that can benefit the soil and the earth. And then what really made us turn that corner was that second year. So those first chickens that someone gave us, we were just selling our few extra eggs to coworkers. And then we got another batch of chickens to produce more eggs the following year. And 7 of them were roosters, and they were just the meanest roosters I've ever met. And you would go in and all 7 of them would come attack you.
Oh, no.
And so we were like, okay, these birds got to go. So we reached out to a friend who's a hunter, and he has no problem killing things. So we said, come take care of these roosters. And he did. And we said, you can just take them. We don't need the meat. But he insisted we keep one of them. And it sat in our freezer for a while. And then we thought, even though this guy was a jerk, we still need to honor his life. So my wife made a chicken tortilla soup, and it was just mind-blowing. I didn't know chicken could taste like that. And so we thought, okay, we can do this in a way that still honors our values. And so the next year we raised our first batch of meat chickens and figured out how to process them. And then that was kind of all she wrote. We were fully on board with being non-vegetarians or former vegetarians.
Oh, yeah. Was that once you tried that chicken you'd raised in that tortilla soup? Was it a fairly quick changeover, or was it that you immediately decided to introduce some meat products into your diet?
That was over 20 years ago, so the exact timeline I'm not 100%
Right.
certain, but it was probably pretty quick. I think we probably had that chicken early in the spring, and then we got our first batch of meat chickens that same year, and we processed 50 chickens in the fall, and then it was probably the next year we started raising our first pork, and then and then it was just kind of one new enterprise a year after that, and then we were fully on board.
I think that's really interesting about raising chickens and then you processed them yourself. I've been around it. We processed chickens when I was growing up. It's not something I look forward to or want to do. Say that I may be getting some meat chickens and have to process them later this year. But to go from a vegetarian, and I think it's important to be conscious of the lives our animals lead, and then get to the point that you were willing to process them yourself without that background.
Yeah, I mean, I remember that first time we had like a copy of Mother Earth News or something opened up, like with step-by-step instructions, because we had no idea what we were doing, and we were plucking by hand.
And before YouTube.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was a disaster. I mean, most people probably would have said, I'm never doing this again, but we thought there's equipment out there that can make this easier. So we built our first plucker, and then it was like, oh my gosh, this is a game changer. But even then, when I look back at how rudimentary that original plucker was compared to what we have now, it's not even the same process.
I'm sure that's the case. And we talked about before the episode how you just have to get started doing something. So if you're going to do it, you just got to jump in and do it. And you learned a lot by doing that first set of chickens.
Yeah. And now we're able to teach people how to do it. And, we've taught probably hundreds of people how to process their own chickens, and, which is super rewarding.
Before we continue down this path a little bit more, let's talk about the area you're in. You've already mentioned it's a high rainfall area. What kind of soils do you have? Is most of your precipitation throughout the year, or do you get it in certain pockets of the year?
Yeah, so our precipitation is not year-round, unfortunately. So summers, like most places out west, are pretty dry. And our rainfall mostly falls between November and March or April. And it continues into May or June. But, we'll get 60 or 70% of our rainfall in about a 4 or 5 month period.
Yes. Is that all coming down as rain, or is some of it coming down as...
It depends on the year. I mean, we get a little bit of snow, but some years we get no snow. Some years we get a couple feet. This year has been really weird. I mean, we had a very wet December with 14 inches. Then we had 3 inches in January. And the mountains have had no snow. It's been very warm.
Yes.
So we've been, our grass is still growing, even though it's early February as we record this. And our soil is like a silty clay, and, there's decent topsoil, but there is a clay not too far underneath that can cause some challenges. But, and through our management, we've really improved our soils on our land with their, we can hold much more water than we ever could before. And it's helping us get through that dry season in the summer. And just that the grazing management helps so much with that. And that's something that we try to teach others around here to do. Because most people in this area don't have irrigation. So I think what I tell people is like, not having irrigation helps make you a better farmer, because you have to work with with what you have, and manage your animals and your grazing and your soils in a way that you can retain that moisture. And if you can just water it whenever you wanted, you don't have to really try as hard.
Excellent points there. With your temperatures, what kind of winter do you all have? What kind of summer do you have?
Yeah, winters are pretty mild comparatively. I think when I've seen what's happening this winter with all of you all in the Midwest and even the South, where it's been just bitter cold. I mean, we've had none of that. But typically, like in the winter, we'd be in the mid 40s to low 50s, and low temperatures, 25 to 40. So fairly mild. I mean, we'll get stretches of a week or so where it stays below freezing for an entire week, but not months at a time. Then in the summer, it's also mild, though it's getting warmer, with climate change. So our average highs in the summers are probably in the 80s, but we'll get up over 100, 4, 5, 6, maybe 15 times in a hot summer.
I have to say, hearing your lows, hearing your highs, hearing how much rain you're getting, you may have more people wanting to move out there.
It's pretty idyllic. I hear people like Greg Judy talk about how Missouri has perfect grazing conditions. It's like, I don't know if he's ever been to Northwest Oregon, because it's
Yes.
pretty primo out here.
Oh, yeah. My wife's from Hawaii. And just when we talk about, one thing she loves about being in Oklahoma is she's got the seasons. Mm-hmm. She's like, we never had seasons. Right. And I can't afford to go over there and live, but man, think about that environment and grazing animals in it.
Yeah, it would be amazing to have grass reliably year round. But yeah, I would miss seasons. I mean, I love all of them. They're all so unique here.
I want to love winter, and I do at times, but at times I don't. So
right. Yeah, it can be challenging here because it's very cloudy most of the time. So people get what they call SAD, seasonal affective disorder, because you just don't see the sun very often. And I grew up in the Central Valley of California where we didn't have that, and so it was an adjustment here. But I feel like I've become naturalized.
When you purchased that land in 2001, was the land set up for any livestock, or were you all coming into a blank slate?
It was a blank slate, maybe a little bit worse.
Oh, yeah.
Because there were a lot of invasives. We had probably 20% of the property was under blackberry. The only barn on the property was pretty dilapidated. It was built straddling a creek and was kind of slowly falling into the creek. But, we made it work for a time. Eventually it did fall down. But yeah, there were no fences. There was nothing. So we kind of had to start from scratch and kind of figure it out as we went.
So I'm curious about that barn, and this is completely on a tangent. Why did they build it crossing the creek?
Well, I have a couple of theories. So one, our property is also very hilly. So it could be that they had no flat ground. When we built a replacement barn, we did have to excavate a flat spot for it. But also there were a few milking stanchions in that barn. And there was also a little trap door in the floor. So I think they might have used the creek as a waste disposal mechanism, which is pretty awful for the people downstream. But it was probably fairly common, 80, 90 years ago.
Right. Yeah, probably so. That's a unique solution to that issue. I had wondered if they maybe did it to have a spring house. So you got water running through there and you could keep your milk chilled or something.
No, it's a pretty low flow creek. So I don't think it was enough water for that.
Interesting. And like you said, we're just working off our theories, no hypothesis, right. No good facts to help us with it. When you got out there at the time, were you familiar with, and I'm going to use a current term, which you wouldn't have been familiar with, but were you familiar with regenerative practices and managing in that way? And I know that's a newer term, but sustainable practices or rotational grazing.
I mean, maybe just in the slightest sense. I mean, we'd done a lot of reading. I mean, I'm just a voracious consumer of information. So I think I knew about it. But I think more than that, I knew that we wanted to farm in a way that was going to benefit the earth and the soil, and which is really the genesis of the name of our farm. So Terra Farma comes from the Latin phrase terra firma, which means solid earth. So terra is earth and firma is kind of the solid part. So, I have a degree in geology, and I was trying to come up with a geologic themed name, and nothing really resonated that didn't sound like too nerdy. And
oh yes,
and
yeah.
so, but I kept coming back to this phrase of terra firma, of solid earth. It's like, oh, what about terra farma? It would mean kind of like earth farm, and in translation. So I thought, well, that's what we want to do. We want to benefit the earth with our farm. And so even though we didn't necessarily know all of those things that we would have to do to get there, we knew that's where we wanted to end up.
Oh, yeah. With those first layers and then into meat chickens, were you moving them, or did they have a chicken coop that was established in one spot?
So the layers were originally established in one spot, but even from our first batch of meat chickens, we did move them. We found someone who had some old Salatin-style tractors that they had transitioned away from, so we went and got those from them and used those for our first year. So yeah, so we were moving our meat birds from the very beginning.
Oh, very good. Yeah.
Which those Salatin tractors, we made it through one season, and I just really wanted something that I could stand up in. So we've been improving our designs on that ever since.
Yes, it's kind of difficult to stand in those. I used a Salatin style pen 1 year raising some meat chickens. Yeah. So just your journey on your chickens. What does your pen look like now?
So our pens right now, we have 10 by 12 cattle panel hoop style pens.
Oh, yes.
And so there's automatic water in the back, just hanging feeder inside. And so we'll do about 60 birds per pen to kind of follow along with the animal welfare approved standards of 2 square feet per bird. And then we move them every day. We have a winch on the front of our ATV that we just hook up and just push the button and it just pulls it along.
Oh, yes. Very good. And I pulled up your Instagram to see if you had a photo of your hoop houses or your hoop pens for hoop tractors. And I see you've got a video of an owl in one right here, not too long ago.
Yeah, that was pretty recent. And if you scroll back a ways further, there's a little time lapse of my wife kind of moving the pens with the remote control.
I think it's interesting you stayed with the smaller footprint. How many of those are you moving?
We have probably up to 8 of those at any one time. Sometimes we have turkeys in some of them. We've had guinea fowl in them. So we'll do batches of 150 to 200 chickens at a time. So we might have 3 or 4 of those in chickens, maybe 2 or 3 or 4 in turkeys at one time.
You mentioned guinea fowl, and I've thought of this idea, and I have not done it. But I've got a few Farm Solution style chicken tractors that I built. Overall, it's going to be pretty similar to your cattle panel one. And I've thought about putting some guineas in there with the chickens, because if I have them laying eggs, I could have some guineas in there and I wouldn't have to hunt so hard for the eggs, and I could incubate some eggs. Now, the first negative I have, well, the guineas may pick on the chickens. That may not work. Second thing is that a big enough area for guineas not to just go crazy? And they're kind of spastic to begin with.
That is true. For your first question, we've never seen any negative interaction between guineas and chickens, even when they're confined in the same space. So I wouldn't worry about that. Yeah, guineas are a handful. I mean, have you been around them before? Yeah.
Yes, I've raised quite a few, and we don't have any currently because the coyotes like them really well. But I enjoy having them on the farm and out here as the driveway alarm.
Yeah, for people that haven't raised them, they are exceptionally loud.
They are.
And we've had, I think, up to 150 at one time. And it's deafening. But I mean, we've had some that we just kind of let free range, And, they usually come back to the house at night, but, because they can fly a lot better than a chicken.
Oh, yeah.
And that's, I think, the argument for keeping them more contained is that when it comes time to catch them, they're not up in the trees, because we process them for meat. And I don't know if you've ever had a guinea fowl, but I believe they are the tastiest poultry there is.
Yes, I have not, and my wife will be disappointed you told me that. The problem, we usually have ours free range, but the problem is they make their nest out in the pasture somewhere, and if we're haying, that's a problem that we may hit the nest, we may lose a hen. If you try and find them, it's difficult to find them.
Yeah, they're camouflaged
when they're out like that. And then, like you said, if you're not putting them in a chicken house or some kind of structure every day, they're roosting on the fences, they're roosting in a tree, and slowly you lose them. And then, talking about the aggression, I don't know that I've ever seen the guinea fowl bother the chickens, but they will pick on a peacock.
Oh, interesting.
When he's got his tail train all up in the air, they will come up behind him and peck him.
Interesting.
And they will just torment him, at least in my experience, the guinea fowl I had. So that was where my concern came from.
Well, and one thing I have seen with guineas and chickens together is you mentioned that they are your kind of alarm bell, but they will also notify, like if an eagle or a hawk flies over, they will sound the alarm, and eventually the chickens will learn that, and then they all run inside if they hear the guineas going off.
Oh, yeah. Now let's dive just a little bit into guinea fowl for food.
Yeah, they are.
So you think it's really tasty?
It's so tasty. We've introduced it to some of our customers, and some of them only want to buy guineas from us instead of chickens now. So they are very, very dark meat. So their breast meat is about as dark as a chicken's thigh meat. And then the thigh meat on a guinea, like in the package, it almost looks dark purple. It's so dark, but it's not gamey. We would process them at about 12 to 14 weeks old. So they're going to be between 3 and 4 pounds. So smaller, longer, and skinnier than a chicken. But the flavor, basically, if you think of the best chicken you've ever had and then multiply that times 5 or 10, that's what a guinea would taste like.
Oh, yes. And to be honest, my first thought is I would worry about being too gamey.
Yeah, not gamey.
And then my second thought is worrying about the toughness of it.
Not as long as you process them young enough, so probably before 14 weeks old. They're not much different than a chicken in that respect.
Oh, yeah. Interesting.
Their eggs are considered a delicacy in France, but they're not heavy producers like a chicken. So you would never raise them,
right?
For a business purpose to sell eggs.
Yes, because I believe they lay 2 clutches a year, or if they. Well, peacocks do that. I've had peacocks and I've had them pinned and set the eggs, and they'll lay 2 clutches if you're taking eggs. So I'm not sure about it.
Yeah, they're seasonal. So, I mean, in that spring, early summertime is when they'll lay, and then they'll kind of shut off for the rest of the year. So I think they're much closer to their wild relatives than a chicken is.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you don't cuddle too many guinea fowl.
No. Yeah, they have some people say they all have a face that only a mother could love, but over time, I really grow to appreciate them, and their feathers are amazing. If you raise them, you could actually develop a market for fly fishermen because their feathers are really desirable for fly tying.
One more thing on guinea fowls, and we'll get back on topic. My grandpa has a few guinea fowl, and he's lost them because they just run loose out there. He's got one left. And if you go up in the afternoon, the guinea fowl, he always comes up to their window and stays in their window during the afternoon, looking in there. Grandma and Grandpa's sitting right there next to the window. He likes to come visit
interesting.
them.
I've heard of guineas, like if you handle them when they're babies, that they can become pretty friendly, but we've never really done that. So we've never had guineas that would be sort of more like pet-like.
Well, I don't even know that he's handled him, except he feeds him every day, and he's lost all his
so maybe
friends.
it's just
So only
lonely.
him. Yeah, maybe so. It's so crazy because he'll come up and he'll peck on the glass too.
Interesting.
So, yeah, it is. At Redmond, we know that you thrive when your animals do. That's why it's essential to fill the gaps in your herd's nutrition with the minerals that they need. Made by nature, our ancient mineral salt and conditioner clay are the catalyst in optimizing the nutrients your animals get from their forage. Unaltered and unrefined, our minerals have the natural balance and proportion that your animals prefer. This gives your herd the ability to naturally regulate their mineral consumption as they graze. Our minerals won't just help you improve the health of your animals, but will also help you naturally build soil fertility so you can grow more nutrient-dense pasture year after year. Nourish your animals, your soil, and your life with Redmond. Learn more at redmondagriculture.com. Anyway, back to your farm journey. I enjoyed that tangent, by the way, Mike. You had chickens, and then I think you said you expanded into pork the following year?
Yeah, I can't remember the exact order, but it may have been the following year that after we raised our first batch of meat chickens. We got basically 2 pigs from our local feed store, and just to see how it would go. And yeah, and then once we had our own bacon, like, oh, holy moly, there's nothing like this. So then we kind of expanded the pig operation, and we're originally just selling wholes and halves. But then probably that next year we added goats. The place I was working, I was managing a pretty large site doing environmental monitoring, and we hired a guy who was bringing in goats to do contract grazing because we had a lot of invasive plants. And he was just such a cool dude that I just spent pretty much all day hanging out with him. And then he told me one day, he kept telling me I got to get goats. And it's like, I don't want any stinking goats. And then, but he was so cool. I just hung out with him all the time. And he eventually convinced me and took me to the auction, and I came home with 10 goats that day, and we were instant goats farmers.
Oh yeah.
And, he was trying to convince us to go into meat goat production, but we ended up going more the dairy route, and then kind of added raw milk sales from our goats to our enterprise mix. And then from there on, we always said that's as big an animal we ever wanted. But eventually I decided that I really wanted to have an easy access for cream. And I mean, you can get cream from goat milk, but you have to get a separator, and it doesn't naturally separate. So we just happened to meet some people who had to move some of their dairy cows because they were losing the lease to their land. And, it was a long buildup of this relationship, but eventually we got one of their cows, and that was just another game changer on our operation, was adding our first dairy cow, and then adding raw milk sales from the cow into our mix as well. And then, intermixed in there, we added turkeys and the guineas, and, much later on we added sheep, rabbits. I'm probably forgetting an animal or two, but we had up to 10 species at one point.
Oh, wow. Keeps you busy.
too busy.
With your dairy cow, were you still milking some goats at the time? So you were milking both?
We were milking both, yes. Yeah. And then, we added a couple more cows. And so we were milking a few cows, maybe up to 7 or 8 goats at one time. And then kind of...
How did you...
I was just going to say, and then doing just direct from the farm sales. So the law in Oregon stated that you had to come to the farm to buy the milk. We couldn't deliver it.
Right. Were the markets the same, or were the customers the same? Or was it this group for cow's milk, this group's for goat's milk, and they were pretty separated.
We had a few people that would get both, but for the most part, they were pretty separated. Some people maybe just like the goat milk better or couldn't tolerate cow's milk.
Oh, yeah.
But I would say as a percentage, it was probably 2/3 to 3/4 wanted the cow milk and the remainder wanted the goat milk.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. For me, when I think about goat's milk and cow's milk, I'd love to have them both in the icebox. And I say icebox. My wife makes fun of me for calling it icebox, the refrigerator, the fridge, but I call it icebox. I don't know why.
It's probably what your mom said.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. I'm sure it came from Mom. It came from Grandma and Grandpa. And I had a few sheep or dairy sheep for a while with the goal of milking them, and I never got there. But I just feel like all the milks taste just a little bit different. They have a few different properties. And then again, I'm an adult who still drinks milk. Some don't.
Yeah, well, dairy sheep are really intriguing because they have such a high butterfat percentage that, you can make some amazing cheeses with sheep milk, but then you have to milk sheep.
Right. And they are not as a dairy phenotype as well developed as goats are.
Right. So you don't have the big bags and the big teats. So it's much more of a challenge.
So through all that, you had lots of species you were raising. And for the marketing aspect, did you find a ready market for your different species?
Yeah. I mean, early on, when there weren't a lot of people doing this, kind of like maybe there's more now, like when we started offering our first meat chickens, I mean, yeah, we would sell out instantly because there was nobody else where you could buy chickens like this from. And and kind of the same with the milk. I mean, raw milk in Oregon, there are some restrictions on the law that kind of make it a little bit challenging. So there's never been a lot of people doing it. So, and there was nobody else in our area that was doing it. So it was not hard to find customers, and especially being so close to the Portland area, which is probably the largest foodie-centric city in the country for a variety of reasons, but really because of the soil in the region. There's just a lot of chefs and people that appreciate food here that that want a good product, are attracted to this region. And then, if you're able to offer that, they're going to find you.
With your raw milk sales, you're no longer doing that.
Correct. Yeah. We stopped 3 or so years ago. We suddenly lost our liability insurance. And there were a number of other producers who also lost their insurance at the same time. And there were no incidents. We tested our milk a number of times. It was always clean. We even tested our manure for E. coli. And because our cows were grass-fed, it wasn't even present. So we ended up kind of at the end of that year just kind of closing down the dairy and kind of moving along our dairy cows. And, in retrospect, it was a really good decision. We had good sales numbers, so that part was hard. And we're still kind of struggling to get back to that point. But we got our life back. I mean, everybody knows, dairying is a 7 day a week, every week of the year job. And, it was difficult, and we were milking twice a day. So it was hard to go out to dinner with friends or, even get away for a day. So, we've been able to get some sanity back in our life, and that's felt really good.
Oh, yes. And I'm sure this doesn't affect you, but I know when I think about myself, I'm not as young as I used to be. So that comes into some of that. But yeah, not having that insurance really puts you in a precarious position if something were to happen. And I know you were doing a great job making sure the cows were healthy, making sure you were selling clean milk.
But with raw milk, if somebody gets sick and they report that they drank raw milk, they kind of stop investigating the cause and just assume it was that. or if somebody
Right.
just thinks they got sick from it, even though they didn't. I mean, it could lead down an ugly path.
It could, yeah. Yeah. With your other products, I know on your website you've got a meat CSA.
Yeah.
How early did you start that, and how's that going
So
for
we
you?
started that in 2020. So the genesis of the idea was I went to the Acres USA annual conference in December of 2019, and somebody had mentioned something about a meat CSA there, and I was like, I wonder why I never thought of that. And just
Yeah.
in case,
It's amazing how that
yeah,
happens.
yeah, one little nugget of information can change your life. And I guess maybe to back up a bit for people that might not know what a CSA is, they're not as common in the meat world, but it stands for community supported agriculture. And most often it's with vegetables where you get a share of the harvest every week. So we were doing custom exempt slaughter before that for our pigs and all of our larger animals. And so we were selling halves and wholes. And I just felt like the margins weren't quite there that we needed. So I started just kind of penciling, even during that session at that conference, kind of penciling out the numbers of what this could look like. And then kind of made a plan that we would start in a few months. And then, of course, that was December 2019. I made a plan to start in April. And of course, in March of 2020 was when COVID happened. So the whole
Yes.
world changed. But, it was such a boom for us, like most other small farms, because people couldn't find good products in the store, couldn't find any products in the store. And yeah, we kind of sold out instantly, even though we started very small. I think we only had 25 shares in that first season. But then, yeah, we've kind of grown that over time. And it's kind of ebbed and flowed, as life in the world kind of returned to normal. People kind of returned to grocery stores or farmers markets or things like that. And so, and I'm not a natural marketer, so I don't really enjoy that part.
Oh,
And,
yes.
I think,
I
yeah, I
agree.
mean, none of us go into farming to be marketers. So, I could have done a better job, but, it was still doing all right. But over time, the things that caused me stress, I think were coming from that marketing and outreach piece. And, as a little side note, 2 years ago, I went to the Ranching for Profit school and then joined up with their kind of continuing program called Executive Link, where they put you on a board with other similar farmers. And that board was amazing. I mean, and that whole training was amazing. The Ranching for Profit school is the best training I've ever been to in my entire life. And I've been to a lot of trainings. But my board helped me see that the CSA maybe was an impediment for us to getting where we wanted to go. And at first I was like, no, you guys are crazy. But then the more it sat with me, the more I realized that, yeah, I think they're right. So our plan is to shut down the CSA at the end of 2026. And we're actually going to go back to custom exempt sales. So, but we're kind of maybe do it a different way. We kind of have I think a better name recognition now. So, and now that I have those economic and financial skills that I learned from Ranching for Profit, we're going to be able to structure it in a way that it does make financial sense for us.
And just as you mentioned that, where do you want to go with your farm?
Well, so we have a couple different things we want to do. So we're going to scale back some of the things we do. We're going to raise probably a lot fewer meat chickens. We're going to look to go to a more seasonal beef operation. So, because we'd always done our own breeding and raise calves up until they're ready for slaughter. But I think I want to do a lot less of that and make our life a little bit more manageable. So we're going to, the cows we have now and the calves, we're going to kind of take them through. We have calves this year and calves from last year that we'll be able to take through to slaughter. But then after that, I think in the spring, so like February, March, when our grass is really starting to take off, we are going to buy probably some 7 or 8 weight cattle, and then take them until October, November, sort of the end of our grazing season, and either sell them live to other producers or get them slaughtered then. And then we don't have any winter feeding costs. So we'll be able to graze them 100% of the time, not have to feed them any hay over the winter. And I think, and then we don't even have cows over the winter, which would be really nice, I think. And then the only thing we'd have in the winter would be our small breeding flock of sheep. But then the other part of our farm where we want to go is we want to become more of a teaching farm. So I am so passionate about managed grazing and how it can benefit the animals, your land, the climate, that I want to just see more people in our area doing a better job of grazing their animals. But we also want to teach people, how to raise meat chickens and process them. I really, even though I don't necessarily enjoy the act of processing, I really like teaching people how to do it in a way that is respectful to the animal. And yet still be efficient at it.
Right. With that focus, you're part of the Oregon Pasture Network. You have Friends of Family Farms.
Friends of Family Farmers.
And make sure I get that name right.
Friends of Family Farmers is the nonprofit that I work for. And they're an Oregon statewide organization that originally started kind of doing that policy work. And they were actually the ones that asked me to come testify to those bills so many years ago. So I've been involved with them since about 2009. And then over time that, their organization grew. And in 2016, they started the Oregon Pasture Network. So Oregon Pasture Network, or OPN, is a program of Friends of Family Farmers. And so they listened to their constituents and realized that livestock farmers were kind of being underrepresented, in the small farm advocacy community. So they realized there was a need for a network. So they created the Oregon Pasture Network, and I became a member of it early in that first year, and then eventually was asked to join the advisory committee to kind of help, grow the program and move it forward. And then after I had left my government job, I'd been working full-time on the farm and I always realized that, if an opportunity came up for employment, I wouldn't necessarily turn it down. So I was always open for the right job at the right time. And when the previous program manager left, I realized, okay, this is it. This is the right time and the right job. And so I started there almost 2 years ago. So in May of 2024, I was hired as the program director, and it's been amazing. It hardly feels like a job because I get to design programming for producers that do what I do. And it's probably kind of like you having your podcast. You get to talk to like-minded producers. And so I get to do that. And so we are, we organize pasture walks. We do online classes. We present at conferences. I help organize conferences. We do all kinds of super cool programming. And we're kind of stepping that up this year where we are actually contracting with Ranching for Profit to bring their school to Oregon for the first time ever. So that's happening at the end of October. So I think for people that haven't been and want to come to the Pacific Northwest, that would be a really great opportunity. It's going to be in Bend, Oregon, so in Central Oregon.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's a wonderful opportunity. And like you mentioned earlier, I've yet to talk to anyone that went to Ranching for Profit and didn't come back saying it's like wonderful, you've got to go.
It's mind-blowing. And their tagline is that it's one thing to know how to farm a ranch, but it's a total separate thing to know how to run a business that farms and ranches. And I always thought that when people talked about it, like when I'd hear people on podcasts like yours talk about it, I thought that they must have such an amazing budget to keep paying these people to say all these amazing things. But now I'm one of those people and I'm not getting paid. So it really is incredible. I think I heard you say once a while back that you hadn't been. Is that correct?
I haven't been. It's something I'd like to do, but also, I'll be honest, I don't feel like our farm's big enough to. I think the benefit might be limited, so I'm always like, that's a lot of money to pay and go. So I haven't
and that's
gone.
exactly what I thought. And so I considered it for 2 years before actually going, because I thought, oh, I'm so small that it's just not going to be relevant for me. And I was probably almost definitely the smallest operation at the school I went to in Billings a couple years ago. And even after the first day, I just felt like such an imposter. It's like, I have no business being here. You know, they were talking about kind of the income you need to support even one full-time position. And it's like, oh my gosh, that seems impossible. But one thing they did at the very beginning is they had you go through an exercise where they said, imagine it's 5 years from now or 10 years from now, I can't remember the time, and everything has gone perfect. What would your operation look like? How much money would you be making? What would be happening on your farm? And you write that down, and then you kind of put it away. And then you kind of, at the end of the week of the school, you kind of pull that back out. And, you know, what first felt so impossible, you know, when you read it at the end of the week, it's like, oh my gosh, this is not only possible, but it's inevitable. And I felt what I learned during that week, you know, I no longer felt that I was too small. I mean, there was somebody in our school that worked at an operation in Wyoming that had 350,000 acres. And,
Wow.
but, you know, we were on the same playing field and learning the same things. And it was applicable to anyone, really, no matter their scale.
Oh, yes.
So, yeah, I would say come to Oregon in October.
I've never been to Oregon, so that's the best offer I've had thus far.
I'll give you a tour.
Yeah, there we go. I do think it's something I need to attend at some point.
Yeah.
You know? And I assume when I do it, I will be like, I wish I'd done
That's
this
exactly what I thought. I mean, I wish I had done it before we started our CSA. I mean, it would have helped me plan, you know, for that economic portion of it that I really didn't have the skills in.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, I wish I'd done it at least 10 years ago. I mean, it would have changed everything.
So if you want to help support the grazing grass, you know, all that can help me go to Ranching for Profit. With the other things the Oregon Pasture Network's doing, what's some events planned for this calendar year?
So I will, in later February, which maybe this might have already aired by then, I am going to be presenting at the Oregon State University Small Farms Conference. So I've created some calculators to help poultry producers, where you basically can input your individual costs and it will spit out a number that you need to charge for either your eggs or your meat birds to be profitable. So I'm going to teach people how to use that tool. So that's coming up February 21st. And then we have a number of pasture walks that we do throughout the year. So we'll be having, you know, pasture walks throughout the state. We're starting a book club this year. I'm starting a grazing cohort in the Willamette Valley. So we have some grant funding to do that for the next several years. So where producers can, kind of similar to the Executive Link Board at Ranching for Profit, but on a much more local level, where producers can get to know each other and help each other, you know, improve their operations. We have a mentorship program where we pair experienced producers with newer producers. And there's probably things I'm just not even thinking about right now. But yeah, we have a busy year planned. But the Ranching for Profit is kind of the big thing that's happening this year.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and that's really exciting that's coming up. So, yeah, people need to be aware of that. The other things you're mentioning, I'm like, you're talking my language. I love the idea of a book club. I keep thinking I need to do something in that area too, and I kick around ideas all the time, and I haven't ever settled on one. In fact, there for a time, I had a second podcast kind of with that idea, but I just didn't like the way it was going, and I thought I'd relaunch it, and I never have. But it's always back there percolating.
Yeah.
Having having a local group, I think about this all the time and think I just need to do it, and I haven't.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, I just made a post on our local community's Facebook page yesterday. It's like, do people want to get together and talk about grazing? And, there's one or two naysayers who just, I realize, they're just the ones who say negative something about every single post. But,
yes.
there was a lot of people who were like, oh my gosh, yes, I want this. And that I've seen, our pastures degraded over the past 50 years. And I'm really hopeful that someone can help us turn things around. So, yeah, I think there's a need out there for more community-based cohesion, and just we all have something to learn from each other.
We do, yeah. And it doesn't even matter. I think just in a recent episode, you may see the conventional guy down the road doing stuff totally different than you, but they have a lot of knowledge too, just in different areas. You can learn from everyone.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Maybe not me, but everyone else you can learn from.
I've learned a lot from you and your show.
Thank you. I appreciate that. The other thing you're doing, which I'm really embarrassed to say, I've never attended a pastor walk. Know if there's some that happen around here or not. I've known about the idea for hundreds of years, it feels like, because I can remember those first readings I have. Pastor walks were always talked about. But tell us more about the pastor walk, how it's done, so I can figure out how to do it.
Yeah, I mean, they're mostly pretty informal. I mean, we kind of reach out to producers, or they might reach out to us that are doing. It doesn't even have to be something super unique. If they're managing their land in a way that is beneficial, we want them to be able to share that and show others how they're doing it, because I mean, everybody's going to do something a little bit different, and they might have unique situations on their land. But we just want people to go to other farms and see how other people do things. So, if somebody, we're planning one at a farm this spring where they do sheep and pastured poultry. So, they're just going to talk about how they manage their sheep, how they move their fences, what their chicken tractors look like, how often they move, but somebody might get a little nugget of information about how their automatic waterer works. And then they'll be able to implement that on their farm. And, some people might be very new, and everything might be a learning experience for them. So they're beneficial for any experience level. I mean, I've learned something from every single one I've been on. And then we usually kind of have like a potluck type gathering afterwards where people can share some food and, kind of have a little more social time and just to get to know each other and, just as a way to continue to build that community. So, yeah, you should do it. I mean, if nobody's doing it in your area, somebody just needs to organize it.
I just did a search for Oklahoma Pasture Walk, and I'm getting nothing comes up. But I'll do some more looking. I know we kind of talked about this before we started recording, that imposter syndrome, because we could do a pasture walk here. I just don't know how beneficial it would be, because I know where I want to be and I'm not there yet.
Well, but you're going to learn things too. I mean, people, if you say this is something I'm struggling with, there might be someone else who's figured that out that's on the pasture walk, and they might be able to say, this is what we did. So, I mean, if you can do a podcast, you've got things to offer.
Yeah, in that I can talk a lot. So yeah,
I hadn't noticed.
Oh, my wife says she notices every time we go to Walmart. The other thing you mentioned was the book club. What kind of structure are you planning?
So, I think we're going to start with kind of sort of what I think might be the foundation of regenerative agriculture, which is Dirt to Soil from Gabe Brown. I mean, you can't go wrong there. And so we're still kind of figuring it out. So we'll probably have people read maybe halfway through the book. We'll kind of have an online kind of call, because people are going to be all over the state. So we're not going to be like getting together in person.
Right.
But, we'll just do some sort of online call. We can talk about maybe the book halfway through, all the way through, kind of what people got out of it, how it relates to their farm, things that they learned, things that they might implement on their farm. But mostly, in my view, it's not so much about the book. It's really about kind of like the pasture walk, getting people together. And
it's about those conversations.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, even when you talk about the conference you're going to be presenting at on February 21st, those presentations are great, but the greatest value to those are those conversations you have between sessions, before sessions, after sessions.
Yeah, yeah. And then, that also helps people engage with our program where they might not have known about us otherwise. And then it helps bring them in the fold. Yeah. And then I guess related to that, another thing we're sort of planning, it's not for sure yet, is to do a pastured poultry roadshow where we kind of get people together and we kind of do a little field trip to, 2 or 3 or 4 different farms in one day to see a variety of operations. And so you can not necessarily do one, it's like a multi-pasture walk. So we kind of visit a number of different places, but with a poultry focus. And then if that's successful, we could do it for cattle and sheep and hogs and whatever.
Right. I think that's an interesting idea as well. Is there anything else you'd like to add to the conversation about the Pasture Network? Or, I apologize, Mike, Friends of Family Farmers. I think I got it right that time.
Yeah, so
before I move on.
I guess one other thing I'd like to say about Friends of Family Farmers is we also have a program called Oregon Farm Link that helps people that have land and people that are looking for land connect.
Oh, that is so important.
So a lot of people have large acreages, but they're not actively farming it. And there's, especially out here, I don't know if it's like that where you are, but there's a lot of young people that really want to get into farming, but the cost of land is so prohibitive that they just can't see a way that they can own their own land. So if they can farm on someone else's land, it's kind of a win for both, because the landowner might be able to get a tax break if their land is being farmed, and then the land seeker can have a place to kind of get their business off the ground.
And that's a topic I get emails about every once in a while, about what programs do you know for someone wanting to get started with, and farmers that's wanting to retire or something along that line. So yeah, I think that's excellent.
Yeah. And then another part of my life where I was as an elected member of the conservation district in our area, the East Multnomah Soil and Water Conservation District. It's kind of a mouthful. But we had a program that would also help with that, where we had a land protection program where we would look for land that either was coming up for sale, or if there was a willing landowner that wanted to see their land protected from future development. And we would look to put a conservation easement on that land. And so basically the easement at its heart restricts future development. So, even though Oregon has really nice land use laws that prevent urban sprawl that you see in most other big cities, that rural land close to the urban area is still very high priced and kind of out of reach for most people. So if we can put an easement on it that says this land can never be developed into a housing development forever, I mean, they go in perpetuity, it has the effect of reducing the market value of that piece of land. And sometimes we put other restrictions on there, like this land can only ever be resold to a qualified farmer, and there's an obligation to farm, so the land has to be farmed. If a landowner doesn't farm it, we can find someone to farm that land for them. So, it can knock, hundreds of thousands of dollars off the price of a piece of land. So, it brings it a little closer into the realm of affordability for a new farmer. It's still, if that was their only income, it still might be tough, but it's not impossible anymore.
Oh, yes. With those easements, was that something a farmer got paid to do, or was it something the farmer said, hey, I want to protect the future on this land, and they did it?
Well, both. So if for a willing landowner, Like if they want to stay on if they're planning to stay on their land and they wanted to see their land protected, yeah, basically the district would purchase an easement from them. And, there's a variety of factors that determine what that easement is worth. Its proximity to the urban area, the land qualities, water rights, things like that. But, potentially they could get a check for several $100,000. And then another technique is if, say, a property is up for sale, sometimes the district just buys the property, and they call it a buy, protect, sell. So they buy the property, place the easement on it. We can put whatever restrictions on it that we want because we are the temporary owners of it, and then put it back on the market with those easement restrictions.
And I assume if you're doing that, there's a pretty good chance the conservation district's going to sell it at a little bit of a loss.
Yeah. So,
yeah.
I mean, our district is tax funded, so we have a property tax base. So we have, and most of Portland is in our district, so we have a decent budget. But yeah, so there is going to be a loss for sure, and and it is using public dollars, so you have to be, very aware of taking care of those public dollars. But right. We're looking at it as it's an overall public good because we're preserving the farmland and helping keep the farm economy viable in our area that, is, at risk of being, totally urbanized.
Oh, very good. Those sound like excellent tools to help with that and that your land continues on because, when we talk about the land here where I live, what does that look like for future generations? And of course, our concern is no one is interested in this way of life after us. But
well, but if you put an easement on it with an obligation to farm, somehow somebody's going to find that.
Oh yeah. Well, Mike, it is time for us to transition to our famous 4 questions. Same 4 questions we ask of all of our guests. Our first question, what's your favorite grazing grass related book or resource?
Wow. I've been thinking about this for a long time, even before I was planning to be a guest on your show. Every time I'd listen, it's like, how would I answer that question? Because,
it's a tough one.
It changes so much over time.
It
in those early years, it would have been all those kind of instructional books. We kind of devoured all those early Joel Salatin books because that's all there was. But now I'm going to cheat a little bit and give kind of a few different answers. So, I mean, I would be remiss if I didn't say Ranching for Profit because that was the most important, training and, development of the way I think about farming as a business that I've could ever imagine. But then I'm going to give a book and a film recommendation. So the book is a Bold Return to Giving a Damn by Will Harris.
Oh, yes.
And for anybody that hasn't read it, I would say listen to the audio version because you get to hear Will Harris talk for 14 hours. And
well, yeah.
And it's great. And I like that because he's talks about how he changed the system. And that's more of what I think about now is how do we improve the system so people can do this in a way that makes sense for them, their business, their employees, the animals, the land. And I really like what he's done down there in Georgia. And then a film that I just watched recently is Roots So Deep. Which, have you had Peter Bick on the show?
Yes, okay, I have.
I thought so. I kept putting that off for years and years because, I didn't need to be convinced to, to start regenerative agriculture because we were already doing it. But right. Then I was like, okay, I need to watch it. And, you have to pay to stream it, but it's not that much. I think it was $10 for like 4 1-hour episodes. And I was blown away. I mean, just the science that they performed, really touched my heart as a scientist. And it was, I mean, it was far better than I could have ever imagined. And the way they compared conventional to regenerative approaches and the years of science that went into them, I mean, I can't recommend it highly enough.
Peter did a wonderful job with sharing that story, documenting it. And like you said, even if you've done regenerative practices since the earth got here, you're going to learn something from it. It's just an amazing film that he's done.
Yeah. Everybody should watch it.
Or docu-series.
Yeah, even consumers, I think, should watch it, even if they're not producers.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, if my family wouldn't just tar and feather me, I'd be like, okay, everyone, we're going to sit down and watch all of these.
Yeah, although we watched it with my mother-in-law when she was here visiting, and we kind of watched one episode a night, and like the next night, she's like, are we going to watch the next one? You know, and she's not a farmer, not in the least. And so it has appeal for anybody.
Well, good. I'm going to brag just a little bit. My sister's listening to some episodes of my podcast, which is just shocking. She's like, actually, it's kind of interesting. So maybe it's the same effect.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. I'm not comparing myself to Peter. Peter does a wonderful job. Excellent resources there, Mike. Our second question, what's your favorite tool for the farm?
So I'm going to cheat a little bit here too, because we have two different kinds of operations. So for our grazing operation, like the cows and sheep, it's the portable polywire fencing. I mean, we just couldn't do what we do without it. You know, the Gallagher reels, the O'Brien posts, it just makes it so easy. Total game changer once we kind of figured out that system. And then, but for our poultry operation, I think it's our 6-wheel drive ATV, because we can haul things around our farm. Our property is very hilly, so it makes it kind of dangerous to drive the tractor on parts of it. But, you know, the ATV can go anywhere, but having that winch on the front to move our chicken tractors every day is just, I mean, I guess we could do it without it, because we did for a while, you know, kind of pulling those tractors by hand, but they were heavy, and I actually tore my rotator cuff from a fall doing that one time. So not only for ease of use, but, you know, just for my own personal health, it's a
right. Yeah. With what kind of 6-wheel drive ATV do you have?
So it's a Polaris. It's called a Big Boss, but so it's not a side-by-side. It's just longer, but it's got a dump bed on the back. So it's kind of like if you took a side-by-side and a regular ATV and kind of smushed them together, you would have that. But it can go anywhere. I mean, all 6 wheels are powered. Yeah, it's a cool tool.
I see that. I'm not even sure I knew that existed.
Yeah, we had one like a really old one at the place I worked, and I never really thought about it. But then a coworker one time said, you should get one of those for your farm. And I thought about it for about 30 seconds, like, I should get one. So they're more expensive than a regular ATV, but they're so much more utilitarian.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So it's kind of a hybrid of an ATV, UTV.
Correct.
Yeah. Very good. I know the polywire is a game changer. Then I learned about your 6-wheel drive ATV, so that's interesting. Nice. On our third question, what would you tell someone just getting started?
Well, I talk to a lot of people that are just getting started, so I kind of have some advice that I often give. You know, one thing that when we started, we kind of had the idea where it's like, we're going to do this ourselves. And, you know, in retrospect, I realized how much of a mistake that was. So I think finding other people that are doing what you're doing and learn from them, or work with them and see what they do, and find a variety of people, you know, go on pasture walks, join a cohort, things like that, and see a lot of other operations kind of really before you even get started, if you have that opportunity. We also host, I don't know if you've heard of WOOFing, which is
I have not.
It stands for Worldwide Opportunities on Organic Farms. So we host people on our farm that want to spend some time on a farm. So they live in our house, they work with us, and there's no money exchanged. So I often suggest to people, like, if you want to start farming, you could go woofing at a few different farms and really get an in-depth feel for how it works there. And I kind of wish that I had maybe done some of that early on, because it's such a unique tool that, you know, you don't have to get a job, but you kind of get those same skills as if you did. And there's a kind of lower bar of entry. So I mean, I think that's a great way for people to learn. And then, I guess when you're starting out, I see people do this all the time where they try to do everything all at once. And
Yes.
it's I think it's a recipe for disaster. But I tell people, if you can, especially if you have kind of some outside income, start slow, think about building soil health and slowly building your business and learn those skills that kind of can move both of those forward together without having all that pressure to try to do it all at once.
Excellent advice on all that, Mike. Mike, you mentioned earlier in the episode you're an introvert, your wife's an introvert. I have arguments about it with my wife that I think I'm an introvert, and she's like, you talk to everyone. But how did you go about building a network of people to talk to? Or maybe a better question would be, did you find some challenges there because you're more of an introvert?
Yeah, I mean, the challenges, were definitely early on because I was just kind of too shy to ask people for help. And then, once I realized like people want to help and
Yes,
they want to share that information with you, it made it easier to ask those questions. But then as I gained more and more skills, it gave me the confidence like, oh, I have information that I want to share. And it made it easier to go out and tell people those things. Even though early on, I was very nervous. I mean, 10 years ago, I would have probably been horrified to think about coming on a show like this, but
I'm horrified all the time. So,
but now I feel like I have stuff I want to share and I'm going to learn something. The more I talk about what I do, the more I learn about what I do. Because I think the best way to learn is to teach. And so I look at that, as the more I teach people, the more I learn too. And it's just mutually beneficial.
I think that's excellent advice there on overcoming that. And I'm going to share a story that I'm not sure I've shared on the podcast. I may have, and I'm not sure at this point if I'll leave it in or not. But when I started the podcast, I didn't know what I was doing. And I reached out to people, and it was amazing. They were willing to record a podcast with me that I didn't know what I was doing, but they did. But I used to be so nervous before episodes, before recording. And I'd tell my wife, I'd be like, I hope they have a farm emergency so I don't have to record it today. And they wouldn't. And afterwards, I was always so energized. I still am. Each of these conversations just energize me. They just motivate me to do more. But those first ones, it was really tough to get past that and get the episode recorded, but I forced myself to do it, and I always got that benefit at the end. So now I no longer dread it. It's just part of what I do. But those early episodes were really difficult, and you think it wouldn't be difficult, but it was difficult for me because I was like, I'm just not sure about this.
Yeah, I think back to the first time I presented at a conference, and there was, 200 people in the room, and it was like, and my heart was just pounding. But so I just kind of focused on the slides and what I had to say, and I got through it. And afterwards, everybody wanted to ask me questions. It's like, this is actually kind of cool.
Right. If you can force yourself to go through that discomfort, the rewards far outweigh it.
And that's where growth lies if you never put yourself in a difficult situation, you're never going to grow.
Exactly. And lastly, where can others find out more about you?
So I've got a few resources here. So our website, which is in the process of being redone. So if you went to our website, recently, it looks stale. But we're going to have a new website soon, and that's terrafarmers.net. And also on Instagram, you can find us at Terra Farmers, TerraFarmers. My work at the Oregon Pasture Network is OregonPastureNetwork.org. Our overall organization, friendsofamilyfarmers.org. And then if you're interested in what we did at the Conservation District with the easements and how all that works and some of the other cool things they do, that's emswcd.org, East Multnomah Soil Water Conservation District. And you can email me at mike@friendsofamilyfarmers.org.
Oh, excellent, Mike. We will put those in our show notes. So make sure you have your inbox cleared out. Before we finish for today, do you have a question for me?
Well, I think we talked about this a little bit before we started, but I'm really interested in how this podcast has made you not only a better farmer, but a better person.
I get the question occasionally about being a better farmer, but I'm not sure I've had it phrased as a better person too.
If it has.
Yeah. Well, I like to think I'm growing in both ways, as a farmer and as a person. And I like to think that I'm better than I was years ago, and even just a few years ago. And ideally, I'm better than I was yesterday. So I'm really that growth mindset. On the farm, we'll tackle that one first, because that's kind of where I live. It has encouraged me to keep going when I'm not seeing what I think I should see out there. It's encouraged me to keep going when I'm tired and my energy is gone. It has encouraged me to try things that I wouldn't have tried otherwise, because I hear people talking about it, or I talk to them about it and how they're doing it. And it's caused me to be a better grazer, better farmer. And then on the personal side of it, as a person, this network that I have of all the past guests as well as listeners, it's just amazing the amount of people I can reach out and ask questions, which that really goes back to the farming, that they really help with that. But it also makes me aware of, I think sometimes when we only know how we grew up, who we've been exposed to, that's our normal. And we believe that's the normal for everyone else. And now working in education taught me that is not the case. And so education really helped me see there's other normals for people that's totally not normal to me. And in seeing that, and then in the podcast, talking to people doing different things in different ways, being different and not doing things the way I do it is fine. And that's for the farm, that's for your personal life, that's for anything else. And I feel like not only has it's helped me be better at that, not that I think I was terrible at that because I was in education, but just reinforces that. And it also reinforces for me that we're all on our own journeys, and I can look at this land and say, that land's being overgrazed, you need to do something else. They're doing the best they can do at that point. And there's times people are going to come by here and say, Cal, you're not doing a very good job. And I'm probably going to raise my hand and say, yeah, I know. I'm trying to get better. But let's support each other, because a rising tide raises all boats. And that's what I feel like with the podcast. If I can help other people with their podcast, if I can help them with their farm, if I can just help people be a better person, I'm here for it. Well, Mike, I really appreciate you taking time out and sharing about your journey and what all you have going there, because you have tremendous experience, lots of different species, a lot of experience beyond the farm as well.
Thank you. This has been a pleasure. I'm really excited to come on. It's one of my favorite shows.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I love how much Mike is doing to help fellow grazers, and that encourages me to do more, whether that's a local grazing group or a pasture walk, going to, attending, or hosting. And my question for you today is, how are you helping your fellow grazers? Jump over to the Grazing Grass community and let us know. Thank you for listening to the Grazing Grass podcast, helping grass farmers learn from grass farmers. More grass, better soil, happier livestock. Keep on grazing grass, and I'll see you next episode.